talks last week. We've got more talks planned for tomorrow. Are you optimistic that there's a deal to be struck?
I'm one of life's optimists, so I always try to be optimistic. But I did speak to people who've been in the room. I spoke in particular last night to Rebecca Long-Bailey, our Shadow Business Secretary, and so far our impression is that Mrs May has not moved an inch on her red lines. That is worrying to me because the clock is running down. We're sort of almost beyond midnight because, we're past the 29th of March. She's asking for more time, but you have to compromise. And compromise is not just telling us again and again how good your existing deal is. This is a deal that's been voted down in Parliament 3 times. And my understanding is that whilst people have been mutually respectful in these discussions, they've been respectful and friendly and positive in tone. In substance, as yet, there's been not a jot of movement from the government, and that isn't going to break the deadlock, I'm afraid.
I'm interested to know if there's been any compromise on Labour's side as well, particularly with regards to a second referendum, because we've been hearing slightly different things from members of the Shadow Cabinet. We can have a quick look just to illustrate to our viewers.
I thought you might do that.
Exactly. Just to make it clear, we've got Emily Thornberry, the Shadow Foreign Secretary, saying any deal agreed by Parliament must be subject to a confirmatory public vote, and Rebecca Long-Bailey on the other side, if we get exactly what we want, a good strong deal, then I would struggle to find a reason to put that to a public vote. You can see why people are confused. Is it a red line, or what is the position?
So you know that as of our party conference last autumn, a second referendum became part of our policy. But as Sam Gina said, it's a process point. It's not an end in itself. And the purpose of having a second referendum would be to stop a catastrophic no deal that we cannot countenance for the reasons that Jess Phillips said in that fantastic interview, by the way. It was a wonderful piece of political TV. We cannot have a no deal because it would be devastating to the lives of so many people in Britain, to business, to the trade unions, but in particular to the poor. So to stop a no deal, to stop a bad deal, and crucially to break a parliamentary deadlock, I have to more and more agree with Sam and with Jess that we can't go on like this. If we can't get proper, real consensus in Parliament, it seems to me that a public vote, and that includes a general election or a second referendum, become more and more likely, even necessary.
But it's not a red line. Just listening to you, if Jeremy Corbyn and Theresa May do manage to get a deal that they can both agree on, that wouldn't necessarily have to be put to a public vote.
Well, I'm personally cautious about putting Shami's red lines out when Shami's not in the room and we're saying we're in the compromise business. But I'm telling you what I think is likely. I don't see at this point in this process, after nearly 3 years since the referendum, with no agreement in the Conservative Party, with some of the options that are closer to our preference, like a customs union, got the most support in Parliament, but that still was not overwhelming support. I find it almost impossible to imagine that Theresa May and Jeremy Corbyn can go and have a cup of tea in a room, or several cups of tea over several days, and then come out and the smoke goes up and everyone's going to be happy. So it seems to me this has been left so late in the day, and I'm afraid I must criticise Mrs May a bit for that. It's been left so late in the day. It's hard to imagine that we're going to make real progress now without either a general election or a second referendum on any deal that she can get over the line in Parliament. And it has to be got over the line in Parliament. This is not going to be a bilateral deal between the leaders of the two main parties. They need to be talking about what might get through the House of Commons.
Talking about areas of agreement, the Prime Minister said this morning that the fact is on Brexit there are areas where the two main parties agreed. The first example she gives is we both want to end free movement. Do you share the same policy on immigration, on free movement, ending free movement?
Well, clearly, she and her party are a much more anti-immigration party, and Labour's never been an anti-immigration party, though there have been times in the past when I haven't liked some of the Labour Party's rhetoric, let's be clear, on immigration, and I don't think that helped when those same people were so campaigning for Remain in the referendum. However, we are where we are. In our manifesto in 2017, we said when you leave the EU, the concept of free movement ends, but that doesn't mean movement ends. So I do think that we are much more positive about the rights of EU nationals in the UK, and indeed of Brits in Europe, and movement between the two.